Hey guys, King of Charmanders here. Today I bring to you a video on critical element versus elemental attack. Is the new meta worth it? Well, this video is going to analyze the two elements above, and we're going to see which one's the strongest by using the strongest and most consistent builds. So we're going to use the strongest weapons from monster types and the most consistent builds with no conditional skills, like latent power and fighting spirit. I'll also only analyze ranged if it has a super weapon, so charge level 3 at damage level 4, because it would generally will apply to the same thing, but super weapons, we like seeing big numbers, so I'm going to see big numbers. But again, this should apply to the others as well. And we'll explore the minimum grade requirements for all elemental attacks. What this means is this is the minimum grade it needs to be in order for it to either surpass critical element or be below critical element. So this is what's going to put the day, because I keep getting questions on when will critical element surpass elemental attack? Well, we're going to find that out. That's a big question we're going to find out for all 5 attack elements. First, we're going to start off with fire. So the fire element has fire attack. And here we have critical element melee versus fire attack. We're using the Silver Rathalos weapons for this example, as it provides critical element level 2 at grade 8. And it is the strongest fire monster type. As we see here, if you see all the things in comparison, I've already circled it. The minimum grade for critical element to surpass fire attack is grade 9.1. So, for critical element as far as fire attack and melee, you need it at least at 9.1 in order for it to surpass elemental attack. Anywhere below, like you see 8.1 right there, 8.1 will not do it. So 9.1 is the minimum for fire attack as far as goes to melee. So if you want your weapon as far as critical element to surpass fire, you must have that weapon at 9.1. Next up, we cover fire attack versus critical element as far as super weapons goes for ranged. And we're going to use the Silver Rathalos weapons for this example, as it provides critical element level 2 at grade 8. It's just that good, and it's going to give you this. As we see here, the minimum grade for critical element to surpass fire attack is grade 10.1. Now, fire is a little weird. You see, with fire, with all the recent updates you can get attack boost level 2 with it. So, because of that, you put everything together, and bang, this is what you receive. It's actually pretty nuts just how good it is, but 10.1 is still pretty high up. With Silver Rathalos weapons, you can get critical element level 5. The only one to do so as of right now, because at grade 8, that's what you have, and with the armor, the minimum you can only get is the 3. So 10.1 is still pretty high, so rejoice. If you're not that high yet, that's okay. You can just use elemental attack level 5 instead of critical element. But if you do, you have something very powerful. For the next element, we have water, and here we have water attack versus critical element for melee. We are using the Mizutsune weapons for this example, as it provides affinity as you upgrade it and is the strongest water monster type. And as we see here, the minimum grade for critical element to surpass water attack is grade 10.1. So as far as right now, the best combination you can get for water is elemental attack 5 and critical eye 4. So when you put that against the standard critical element build, or the best critical element build, that's what you get. 10.1 is when it passes it. And it's actually, it's not a huge difference. You have 3100 versus 3300 about, so it's only a 5% difference, but still 10.1 pretty big. So if you don't have it at 10.1, again, you could just use critical elemental attack level 5 up until you reach 10.1, and then you can think about switching. Moving on to the next element, and we have thunder attack versus critical element as far as melee goes, and we are using the Zinogre weapons for this example, as it is one of the strongest thunder monster types. The other ones were Rajang, but Rajang has the negative affinity, so I'm not going to deal with that madness. Because in order for critical element to proc, you need affinity. So yeah, it just really depends on how that goes. But for Thunder, again, critical element would work best with Zinogre, because Zinogre doesn't have that negative affinity punishment. And as we see here, the minimum grade for critical element to surpass Thunder attack is grade 10.5. So yes, you have to have it at max in order for critical element to surpass the elemental attack as far as Thunder. This is because Thunder is one of the most flexible elements along with Fire. It's been that way for a long time, but the added perk you get with Thunder is you have Burst. And because of that added ability to have Burst, it gives you that extra edge as far as elemental attack. but it's still pretty dang impressive that critical element level 3 will still overtake burst at one point, even though it is at maximum. Moving on, we have ice attack versus critical element melee. So here we're going to compare these two, and we are using the Kushala weapons for this example, as it is the strongest ice monster type. I could use Legiana, I could use Barriath, but generally it's Kushala, because Kushala is amazing. And critical element, it goes off of your original elemental attack. So it doesn't matter how much you stack ice on top of it. Contrary to other people spreading misinformation, elemental attack does not stack your critical element. It only goes off your base element. So, as we see here, if you put all the data together or look at all the data, the minimum grade for critical element to surpass ice attack is grade 10.1. And it's really interesting. You take a look at this chart right here, grade 10.1 with critical element will actually beat 10.5 max elemental attack. Probably the only one to do so, as far as melee goes. Moving on, we have ice attack versus critical element as far as super weapon range goes. That's because ice has a super weapon in the Kushala bow. We are using the Kushala weapons for this example again, as it is the strongest ice monster type. But what makes this really interesting is that critical element does not surpass elemental attack level 4. Now the thing is, you can only get to level 4. That's possible right now unless you drift smelt with the Kushala bow. So it is still very interesting, as you see here. But here's an important note. Move on to more data. Ice is the only one that happens with this because it has Kushala Frostwind 3. The Kushala Frostwind 3 build actually beats out both the critical element and ice attack builds at even grade. So if you put the mano-y-mano, the Kushala Frostwind level 3 will beat it out. I've had some people ask this question to me as someone that actually has the Kushala bow and doesn't gonna misinformation you because of it. It's the same. So I have it. I have that build, the Kushala Frostwind 3, and thankfully it's not beating out, even though I have the critical element build, but Kushala Frostwind 3 plus all other elements considered is just way too dang good to give up. Moving on to the final element, we have dragon attack versus critical element as far as melee. And we are using the Near Gigante weapons for this analysis, as they are the strongest dragon monster type weapons, except Devil Joe can beat it with specific weapon type skills. So before all of the, hey wait, hold on, you're wrong crew comes along, it depends which weapon. Again, Devil Joe, so way too much data to put together, so I'm not going to put each and every monster type. We're just looking at the general outlook as far as dragon type goes. And if we take a look at the base damage, Near Gigante does beat out Devil Joe, not considering the equipment skills. And as we see here, the minimum grade for critical element to surpass dragon attack is grade 10.1. If you look at it, it's barely an edge. You have 3,252 versus 3,244. That is a very small difference. However, the data we have here is peak performance. So that's all considering peak performance being active. If peak performance isn't active, this number will fall out as far as elemental attack goes. That's just because Dragon is weird. Before Devil Joe release, Dragon did not have the ability to go to elemental attack level 5. And if we're talking about drift smelting right here, well, the drift smelt bonanza is the only way you could get Dragon attack. And that event's not consistent. It's not a permanent drift stone. So as of right now, this is what you got. And last but not least, we have Dragon Attack versus Critical Element, Super Weapon Ranged. So you have two super weapons. Dragon actually has two. You have the Near Gigante bow and the Goldrathien bow. But for this one, we're looking at the Near Gigante bow because overall, everything considered, the Near Gigante bow is better than the Goldrathien bow. And we are using Near Gigante weapons for the analysis as they are the strongest dragon monster type. Again, there are two different types of super weapons. You have Goldrathien and Near Gigante, but again, overall, out everything considered, Near Gigante overall is still the better one. And as we see, if you pop the data together, the minimum grade for critical element to surpass dragon attack is going to be grade 10.5. So it needs to be maxed out in order for it to surpass it. And that's because critical element, if we're going to look at it as far as Goldrathien goes, Goldrathien bow does have affinity. So it pairs even better with critical element. Also take into account, this data does factor in peak performance. And it's just the way it is because Nier Gigante is weird, and like I mentioned, Dragon Elemental before does not have a lot of flexibility. So again, take away peak performance, and the critical element build will surpass the elemental attack build as far as Dragon goes.
He's so slow, mentally and physically. And don't get me started on her performance.
Ah yes, slow physically and mentally. You know, when you put data together, that's how I felt, because I was like, wow, it takes a while to get it to surpass it. Usually the meta anyways for elemental attack is going to be at lower levels, and then once you get to higher levels, you can start being picky. But as you saw right here, for most of, not all the elements, it's like 8.1 to 10.1 are max. So it's going to take a second if you want to get to that critical element build surpassing elemental attack. And in all honesty, the difference is really average, unless we are talking about Silver Rathalos weapons, because they have the extra critical and critical element level 2 at grade 8. So you can still use elemental attack level 4 or level 5 if you have it. You might notice a slight difference, but in all honesty, yes, you could still use elemental attack. And generally at maximum though, the critical element build is the meta versus elemental attack for all monster types except for ice. We saw the ice data right there for the Kushala bow. It's not going to beat it, so in small scenarios, that will be the thing. But don't listen to everybody else that says like, oh my gosh, you know, use elemental attack with critical element. It doesn't work that way. Critical element only stacks with the original attack of the weapon. It doesn't stack with anything else you give it. So don't listen to them. They have no idea what they're talking about. And in addition, critical element, the build is expensive. Yes, it will generally beat everything out, but take into consideration like the resources you have to put into it. So if you don't have it, don't stress about it. But the meta is the most efficient and the fastest way to do something. It's not going slower or doing all of this madness. No, it's the fastest, most efficient way. That's the way it's always been in gaming. If you competed in gaming, you know that's what it is, or if you're a very good gaming fan. If not, don't redefine meta just because it works for you. No. With that being said, please do me a huge favor. Like, subscribe, and comment for the YouTube algorithm. Hopefully this did help you out with that magical question of, is critical element better than elemental attack, and when? Good luck on your grinds, and I will see y'all on the next video.